Hello everyone, it's Silvia. Welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to have a look at the Unveiled Tarot, and it's going to be a walkthrough, but we're also going to have a look at the guidebook. We're going to discuss about the quality of this deck, and we're also going to try out a few pairings with oracle decks that I think may go well with this tarot deck. And we're also going to do a reading for all of us. So the Unveiled Tarot is by Jessie Lonergan. It's published by Liminal 11. Here I can see they still go by Liminal 11 at the bottom, as you can see here in the box. By the side here is the Sterling Ethos, New York. I believe that they Liminal 11 is based in the UK and is licensed or is licensed in Sterling Ethos to publish or distribute their decks. I might not be entirely correct, but I believe that's what's been happening. This deck is, as such, can be found as a mass market deck, so you can find it on your local metaphysical bookstore, you can find it in your Amazon in your own country, or you may have to buy it from Amazon UK, like in my case, but you know, nowadays we just know that if you live in Australia, Amazon Australia doesn't have an incredibly huge stock in Melbourne and Sydney, and so sometimes we have access to Amazon Germany, UK, the US, and even Japan. So I don't complain anymore because there is enough availability when it comes to tarot and oracle decks. It's just that sometimes we have to wait a couple of weeks. It's absolutely fine. So looking at the box, you guys know me, and you know, if you've been watching any of my videos, particularly when I talk about one of Liminal 11 decks, I am never crazy. I'm not a fan about the box in the box situation, particularly because it makes this product, this deck, slightly more expensive. Obviously, you need to pay for all the packaging. It is very beautiful, and I can completely understand that this is what they would call their signature box. If you're not familiar with it, it comes with this really sturdy outer box, and then you open it like this at the bottom. You see, you open it like that, and then you have two thumb cutouts here. You can lift out and you can slide out another sturdy box that is obviously decorated with images from the cards actually inside. And inside this one, there's nothing else. Inside this one, you would generally see the deck and the guidebook. I have taken my deck out of this because, as I always do for any Liminal 11 boxes, I just prefer to keep the deck in a bag if I can. It's just a lot of material that we have to pay for. And at the end of the day, this is a mass market deck. It's still priced as a mass market deck, so it's not like they're asking $80 for it, but still the $50 that we have to pay, that will probably cover also the cost of the two boxes, will probably be reduced down to $40 had we not have to pay for these two. Not complaining, just pointing out a couple of things. And yes, these are really beautiful, as always. At least there is that, obviously. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to discuss about the guidebook, and the deck is inside this bag from the Tarot Bag Ladies. This is absolutely gorgeous. I really, really love this deck. It is centered around bees, and I don't believe there's any bee in the deck itself. But let me just show you the inside. And I know this is the third time that I'm showing the inside of the bag. It's just so beautiful. And I get to choose which deck I want to store in this bag, and it's going to be the Unveiled Tarot. There you go. So we're going to have a look at the cards in a second. But first, let me just show you the guidebook, and let me just zoom in because obviously we want to have a proper look at it. So it's this one here. So as you can see, it is a sturdy hardcover book. It is tiny though. It is very, very short, I would say. And when you look at the contents, we're looking at, it doesn't show the number of pages here, But if you look in the listing, you will see that it's got only 64 pages. And now, knowing that we have 78 cards, we already know immediately that it's not going to have a full page for each and every card. Also, because we can imagine that there's going to be a foreword. For example, we know that there's going to be a foreword by Mike Mignola, and that there's going to be an introduction and possibly some other introductory pages. So by the way, in here, it actually specifies that Sterling Ethos is in partnership with Liminal 11 for the publication of this deck. So yes, we do have a foreword, we have the introduction, then we go straight into the major arcana. Then we have a couple of exclusive cards. As a matter of fact, this is an 80 card stack, not a 78 card stack. We have the main minor arcana, and then we also have a section that says how to read the cards. So if we jump immediately to the section on how to read the cards, which is just this one here at the end, it just gives you nothing specifically related to this deck. Sometimes you will see that some decks will come with a dedicated custom spread that, let's say, lets you delve deeper into the deck itself because it might be a very thematic kind of deck. In this case, it's not that. We have the classic 3 cards pool, and it does call it the veil, the unveiling and advice, but at the end of the day, the meaning of these prompts is the same as you would think. So the veil is how the situation is presenting itself. The unveiling is a new perspective, and the advice is how to move forward. Or you can also use the past, present, future, or the material or financial state, emotional state, and spiritual state, or change, cause, solution. These are many variations on the 3 cards pool. I like that there's still a bit of an effort put into naming them this way, the veil and unveiling and advice. So it is rather nice, but let's say it's definitely not going to be one of those guidebooks that you're going to want to use for other decks as well. There are a lot of guidebooks for different decks that have so much information about numerology, about astrology, about even Kabbalah, about alchemy, that you definitely want to keep on your desk, because even if you're not necessarily using that particular deck every day, you might want to have a look at that book almost every day, because it would definitely give you the opportunity to deepen your knowledge. This is not one of those guidebooks, but do we actually always need a guidebook like that? I would say we don't. What I do need, though, is a guidebook that tells me something that I don't necessarily know or I cannot necessarily see in the cards. Let's have a look at and see whether this one does it or not. So we've got the forward here by Mike Mignola, and Mike says that he absolutely loves the horror genre, and he thinks about the horror genre and ghost stories whenever he thinks of tarot, but then he also admits that he doesn't know much about tarot, he doesn't know the cards, doesn't really know how to read them. But when he was asked to have a look at this deck made by Jesse Lonergan, it was really amazed by how beautiful it is and how deep the cards are, and I would have to agree. And so this is just a forward, and then we have the introduction by the author and creator of the deck himself, Jesse Lonergan. So it says the first card that he drew was the Death card, and he says it's something that gives him comfort because he thinks that the anxiety that you may feel in everyday life mean nothing if you think that probably most likely 100 years from now, no one that you know will be alive, and it's most likely that very few people will even remember you. So it says these thoughts, they actually put things under perspective, which is fine, which is true. And it is very interesting, the introduction that he gives. And it says that the idea with my cards is to capture the quality of difference and similarity, ancient and modern, near and far, upright and reversed. All of the cards have 2 images which come together in some way or another, and the intention is for this juxtaposition to create harmony or dissonance that leads to new ideas that are more than the sum of the constituent parts. I immediately saw this when I looked at the cards and I went through the deck in my first impressions. I immediately saw the coexistence in the same card of elements that are very traditional of the RWS and elements that are very, very modern. I like the way in which there was a seamless integration of the two images, one within the other. And I also like the way that by doing so, Jessie is actually proposing us to look at the cards in a different way by still remembering the way in which we read the traditional RWS. So I'm 100% on board with the way in which this deck has been thought and created. And then we're looking at the major arcanas. Obviously, you do have a little bit more, let's say 1 page for each major arcana, which actually means that at the end of a book, you will find the minor arcanas only have 1 paragraph each, which, you know, at the end of the day, do we need more than 1 paragraph? I would say we do. I would say we do, in the sense that I, for one, always love to read guidebooks because they give me an idea of the thought process behind the creation of a particular deck, but also they give me an idea on the very first interpretation of the deck, which is the one by the author himself or themselves. I prefer to do that. I prefer to look at things through their own eyes first and then mine. And generally speaking, I already have my ideas because I do a deeper study of the guidebook even after the first impressions of the deck. So I have my first impressions, then I look at the cards through the eyes of the creator, and then I can go back to my first impressions and confront them with what I now know about the deck, having studied the guidebook. So I would probably have preferred something longer, a longer description of the cards. And I also have to say something. So as you can see here, there's all of these cards, and has, as Jessie has explained in the introduction of this deck, the cards have 2 images, and one of them is always encased or framed, and the other one is the outer frame, let's say, of the card itself. When it comes to the majors, you do get a bit of an explanation about the choices, the artistic choices, and also the choices of the images on the cards. But when it gets to the minor, you don't always get it. So you do get it sometimes, but you don't always get it. And I'm thinking it's probably because of the lack of space. So Jessie still wanted to report the meaning of the card in order for a beginner to have easy access to the meaning of the cards, but at the same time, it didn't have enough room, real estate, in order to also explain the choices that is made. So we are left to interpret these choices ourselves. I am going to do my best. There might be some times in which I rely entirely on what is being written or what I can read out of the guidebook. And there might be times in which I had my very own epiphanies by looking at the cards. And so I will explain what I think is going on in the cards. For anything else, I guess there's the tarot community. Obviously, I've seen another couple of walkthroughs of this deck, and I've seen that some people missed some things that I saw, and I have actually missed some things that other people saw. So I am trying to integrate everything that I've seen with everything that I've heard as well. Having said that, let's go and have a look at the cards. So as I said, I stored them in this really gorgeous bag. And we're just going to have a look at them one by one, starting with obviously the major arcanas and in specific the Fool card. So what I'm going to do, because I don't necessarily have an explanation for all of these cards and the reason why some choices have been made by the author, I would definitely point out everything that I see. And when I can give you an explanation, I will. If I cannot, then I will ask you for your opinion on the card. So we've got the Fool card, and obviously this is the reproduction of the inauguration of a new leader. So it could be a president, it could be a prime minister, and it's definitely a new leader saluting the public that is attended the inauguration and the celebration, etc. This is obviously pointing to new beginnings, but at the same time, and I was reading in the book, and I really like the way in which this card has been explained by Jessie, we need to be very careful because because when we are a fool, then we can laugh at the world together with the world. But when we're a clown, the world will laugh at us. So we're basically looking at two different aspects of the fool, the wise fool and the beginner's fool. The fool that starts everything from scratch without having any prior experience, maybe sometimes making something ridiculous of everything that he does. And so he will probably feel like everyone is pointing at them and making fun of them. Is it the case? Perhaps it is, perhaps it's not. But we need to get out there, we need to start our journey. Then we're moving on to, by the way, these are the backs, and I forgot to talk about the cardstock. So this is your typical Liminal 11 cardstock. So it is, let's say, one of those cardstock that it doesn't go for a luxurious product. This is not a collectible item. This is one of those stacks that you can actually use over and over and over again without fearing to damage the cards. I would say it does have a really good bounce. The cardstock or the finish of the cardstock is semi-gloss, so it's not entirely gloss. There is a component of matte on the cards, which I actually like, but it is glossy enough in order to give the possibility to the colors to actually spark, and they are actually quite beautiful when they are saturated. And the cards glide very easily, as you can see. There's absolutely no problem in shuffling the deck or fanning it out. It's actually really, really comfortable when it comes to the when you're touching the cards and you're using them and you're shuffling, etc. And these are the backs, which are really beautiful, and the concept is repeated on the backs as well. So we can obviously see there are two images, one outer frame and one inner frame. Even though they are complementing each other, and there is this really seamless flow of integration between the two images. So we've seen the skeleton of the tree here and here, obviously because the image is flipped. But we also see how luxuriant the vegetation and the foliage is outside of this frame. So moving on to the Magician, I've talked about the Magician because when I was giving my first impression about this deck, I literally just unboxed this deck and I was looking at Magician card, and I immediately saw that here, you see here, this is a person. Okay, so this shows you that this is actually not on the moon, whether this is pointing to the landing on the moon, but it's actually in a movie set. And you can also tell because there is a T sign here, which is not necessarily a sign. This is Scotch tape. And when you work in a movie production or even documentary production, I used to work in a documentary production, and we use these things all the time in order for a person that is on camera at the moment to know where they need to stand. So this is literally the filming of the landing on the moon. It doesn't necessarily tell you that the landing on the moon did not occur. This is not a conspiracy theory, but it does tell you that being the Magician sometimes reminds us of that saying, fake it till you make it. Perhaps you have the resources, but you're not being the persona you need to be in order to use all of those resources. So you need to change persona every now and then, and you also need to make the world believe that you actually know what you're doing. I think that this is a very humble way to interpret this card, and I actually really like it. Then we got the High Priestess with a rock singer. As you can see that here, the outer frame shows you this is the audience, is this the person with the microphone. There's also someone playing a guitar here. And in the inner frame, we see a more traditional depiction of the High Priestess with the moon, etc. So this is really interesting because in the guidebook, it talks about the silence. We're so used to noise that we think that silence is just for ourselves. And yet there is life, there is intuition, there is, let's say, that reaching to the innermost core of ourselves, our hearts and our souls in silence. So sometimes the high priestess is, and this is my interpretation, the high priestess looks for the knowledge that is in plain sight, but also hidden. So it's hidden when it's in silence, and it's in plain sight when it's being sang. Then we're moving on to the Empress, and this is a very interesting card. At the beginning, I thought that this was the hand of the Empress, as you can see here. And it looks like it's the hand, and it's got 5 fingers, which themselves have some ramifications. So it looks like, obviously, these are the roots of this tree, which is also very similar to the tree on the backs. But at the same time, it feels like it's the hand of the High Priestess. And even though it's not 100% explained this way in the guidebook, it does say that the High Priestess is, let's say, achieving and learning from the natural world, and so taking from the natural world. So this hand could be spread but ready to be retrieved in order to grab something from the natural world and integrate it into the strength of the Empress. But at the same time, it is also a motion of giving. So this hand could also be releasing, nurturing to the natural world. And I really like that interpretation as well. When it comes to the Emperor, at first, I was a bit confused because I didn't necessarily understand whether there was a good take, a positive take, or a negative one. And you will see, this is very typical of this deck. There will be, I believe, that all of the cards have been interpreted and also depicted with the possibility to show the shadow side of the card together with the light side of the card. So this is really interesting, and even though tarot by itself does have that, it presents the possibility, at the same time we are so used to see different decks for shadow work, or decks that have, for example, a part that is in shadow, a part that is in light. And so it will tell you that when you read reversals, for example, you should read the part that is in shadow, and so on and so forth. This one instead just presents you with one image, or rather 2, in a frame, of course, but both, they reflect back on the possibility to read both shadow and light meanings from the same image. And that is what is happening here. And as a matter of fact, I really like it, because when we see this, this is a statue. And a statue is something that is very cold, it's sterile because it's not moving, it's something that is there for millennia. And at the same time, this one tells us that the Emperor, yes, the Emperor is bringing back order after the chaos, and they are the ones that will release the laws, and they will be the ones that make it so that the laws are enforced and so on. But at the same time, the Emperor should remind himself of themselves that they're not made of stone. They're not necessarily a statue. They're human beings. And as a consequence of that, they should never lose sight of the fact that humans sometimes make mistakes. So they should be lenient. They should be compassionate when they are exercising their power and their dominion. And then we're moving on to the Hierophant. And the Hierophant in this case is clearly a, I would say, a religious leader because of these clothes, of course. But at the same time, it's also someone who bears out their bodies. As you can see here, it's a bare-chested person with a crown of flowers on top of the head, and also a necklace made of flowers. So there is this reminding the Hierophant never to get stuck in something too stiff, too guided, too channeled, let's say, because otherwise there is the risk that their teachings will become dogma. And so the Hierophant needs to remind himself or themselves to always learn something new. That is my own interpretation. Always learn something new. Always be open-minded to achieve a additional layer of interpretation of everything in order to be teaching something new and adapting to the passing of time. And with the Lover's card, my interpretation was the passing of time, in the sense that we see a scene here framed in the card with the lovers taking, you know, the same train in a subway, for example, but being so closed up to meeting others, because one is looking at their phone, the other one is listening to something. But at the end of the day, if we are always closed to meeting other people, we will never proceed to the next stage, and understanding that sometimes we can actually fall in love with someone. And this is the external part of the card reminds us that that is always a possibility, that we can be together in a different way if we start from accepting to be more open. And then we got the Chariot card. So in here, these are vintage race cars. And it used to be, so I'm very fond of this card, because in Tuscany, when I used to go when I was little for a holiday, we used to go to the Circuito del Mugello. So in Mugello, in the countryside in Tuscany. There used to be a circuit, and there used to be races, car races there. They used to be actually part of the international number of races that you need to participate in order to qualify for the World Championship of car racing. And I also remember that then it was dismantled, or at least, let's say, it was not part of the international car races. But when I used to go there, I remember that there used to be these vintage cars, because every now and then there were meetings of really beautiful vintage Ferrari cars like this one. And they used to race, and it was absolutely amazing. And I remember the noise, that I could feel it just booming inside my chest, because when you go really close to these cars, they are very, very noisy. It was really nice to see this card and remember that, and I really appreciate this. The Chariot, obviously, this is a card that is winning, because I don't know if you can see it, but this is the person that has the flag, and it's the end flag, so it's obviously moving the flag when the car is reaching the end of the race. And so this is a winner, and it looks like it's the red of a Ferrari, so I really like that. But at the same time, we can also see the traditional way of depicting the chariot inside the frame. So there is this moving from modern to, let's say, traditional, and vice versa. And the Strength card is a card that really hit me. It's a really beautiful card, a very powerful one as well. I'm sure you can all see what it is. So we are in the middle of a corridor, a hallway in a hospital. And there is this sense of movement, but also the sense of urgency, because there's someone literally screaming here. And there's someone pushing. This is a bed, and obviously there's a couple of IVs here, and there is this sense of urgency. There is this sense of how precarious life is. But there's also the strength that comes from understanding that strength is not just taming the lion, which is obviously in the inside of the frame, but it's also about saving people, healing. So the compassion that comes from this card is very noticeable in here. We also have the lemniscate, which is a traditional symbol from the RWS. I really, really love this card, and I like the way in which this has been depicted. When it comes to the Hermit card, my interpretation was slightly off from Jessie's interpretation or explanation of the card. So Jessie brings about the necessity for each and every one of us to find our core selves, even when we are surrounded by the crowd. To me, this was more like the feeling alone that you can experience even when you're surrounded by the crowd. But in any case, it's still very beautiful because it shows you the traditional depiction of the hermit, but in a very modern setting, like this could be a street in London, for example. And then the Wheel of Fortune. I love the fact that Jessie talks about the fact that life is so unpredictable sometimes, that we might as well just gamble everything, because that is exactly what we're doing when we decide, when we plan, when we think that we can plan something and everything. It is just gambling. We have no idea whether we're going to succeed or not. And I really like that that is brought back into the Wheel of Fortune, not just because it looks like it's very well integrated in as the image here, as you can see, but also because there is a lot of truth to what Jessie says. And I really like that. Justice is, Justice said, this is the time in which we have to get rid of all this monkey business. It's the time in which we want to know the truth, and the truth will prevail. And with the truth, we'll also understand that whatever has been bad will still be called bad, and we'll have to respond to the responsibility of being something negative. And what's positive will also be encouraged and revealed to everyone else. So there is this sense of raising the cardboards for, the design here, for example, but at the same time, it feels like there is this raising of the sword, because there is this demand for truth, let's say. And then we're moving on to the Hanged One, the Hangman, which is a favorite of mine in this deck, because I really like the way in which this has been depicted. So what we see here, I hope it's clear, this is a magician, and I talked about Houdini, but obviously it could be any magician, but this is the magician's act in which someone, the magician, is chained to a really heavy rock or a metal ball or something like that, and they're thrown in the sea. And the trick is that they need to release themselves from all of these locks and chains and swim to the surface. I like this idea because the Hanged One is always presented as someone who's hanging upside down and looking at things from a different perspective, but at the same time, there are some interpretation of these cards as to the one person that is, yes, looking at things upside down, but also coming to the surface thanks to that different perspective. So it's almost as if it were taking us to a step further from the traditional interpretation, not just looking at things from a different perspective, but also finding a solution. The Death card, this is showing some very desolate scene here. Obviously, there's skulls and people that are no longer alive. And there is this horse carrying a knight, but this knight is also moonlighting as the Grim Reaper. So this is interesting because in Justice's description, it says, even in the most desolate of landscapes, even after everything bad has happened, we can still believe in rebirth. And so this card is showing just that. The Temperance card is a bartender. I called it barista the first time I saw it, but it's not a barista. I just thought that they were making, I stupidly thought that they were making a coffee. I thought that this was milk. I don't know why I thought that. This is clearly a cocktail. So this is a bartender, and it is still really brilliant as a card because obviously it's the Temperance card, which is generally speaking depicted as an angel moving the water from one cup to the other. And in this case, it's the way in which this bartender is making a cocktail. There is always that sense of having to find the right mix, which is very important when you're making a cocktail. So I really like this interpretation or depiction of the card. The devil really made me gasp in the interpretation. I wasn't sure 100% when I first saw the card how to interpret this, but this is how it goes. So basically, this talks about the house chore. So you've been doing the laundry, you've been vacuum cleaning, you mown the lawn, but have you faced the devil today? That is literally the way in which Jessie is presenting this card. And I have to say, yes, it made me gasp. So it's obviously quite confrontational, but it's obviously very, very deep. I really like the fact that this is not what it looks like. So you see this family that looks like a happy family in front of the happy house with the garden and blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, what you need to understand is that we also need to face the devil. We also need to face our deepest fears. And the devil, let's not forget, and this is my interpretation, the devil is the teacher to the Lovers card. The devil is the card that forces you to face your fears and learn from them and not shy away from them. And the tower, so the tower is basically represented as a castle in the sand, and it talks about how easy it is for our lives to just be, to go through a complete demise, within a few hours. So there's always something that can happen around the corner, and what we should focus on, and this is my interpretation, is understanding who we can trust and what we can bring after the destruction, we can still bring back to us. And the star card, so I've been reading about the star card, and it's all about finding the guidance from the stars. This is obviously an observatory. It reminds me of the movie Contact with Jodie Foster, but it also reminds me of an observatory in the Atacama Desert in Chile. Obviously, the access to the starry night is unbelievable over there, but I have seen just as many stars as in Uluru, for example, in the red center of Australia. You do have really starry nights, and it's just incredible to look at how many stars, billions of stars that you can look at from certain spots in the world. So the star obviously is observing this, the star card is observing the stars in the sky at night, which is very beautiful and interesting. What I'm trying to understand here is whether we are talking about someone like Galileo, for example, so a modern way to look at the stars and an ancient way to look at the stars. This is my interpretation, but I'm not entirely sure. And I couldn't really find an indication that that was correct or wrong in the guidebook. The moon card is another very confronting, I believe, kind of card, because this is a nine. This to me looked immediately like a nine of swords. And when I looked at the discussion about this card in the guidebook, it was actually confirmation. So there is something to be said about our thoughts when we don't have any defense. So when we're dreaming, for example, we access our subconscious, and the knowledge of that subconscious is sometimes confronting, because we have to face some things that we might not be able to tell ourselves during the day under the light of the sun. And so that is the right moment to do so at night, during the thanks to the light of the moon. But at the same time, this reminds me, especially because the wolf is very threatening, I would say. It's very scary here. It reminds me a lot of many movies where, the 3 a.m. is called the hour of the wolf, because you're always facing your fears. And that's something that I talk about when I talk about the Nine of Swords. So that sense of anxiety, about remembering what could go wrong and thinking that it will go wrong. I don't know what I think about this association between a Nine of Swords and the Moon card. I see the moon as a very peaceful card, not as something that is necessarily producing anxiety. So I don't know where I stand. Let me know what you think in the comments below. It is a very interesting take on the moon for sure. The sun is very funny. I absolutely love this card, because you can see here, this is a merry-go-round, or a roller coaster, actually. Sorry, it's a roller coaster. And everyone is throwing their arms up in enjoyment. And there's so much fun. And at the same time, we are reminded of the traditional symbology of the sun card, because this is literally the naked baby riding the horse here and throwing their arms up in joy with the sunflowers and the sun, etc. It is that moment of joy, and I also recognize the way in which I interpret this card. Yes, it is a moment of joy, but it's just a moment. It's something that you can enjoy at the moment. And actually, this card reminds us of celebrating the little things, the little joys, because they don't last long, but they do represent a lot of energy that we can assimilate. So it is a very beautiful way to depict this card as well. The Judgment card scares me a little bit, because these are clearly hands coming out of the soil, and it looks like they are zombie hands. So obviously there is that sense of the trumpet being played out, and people having to come up from the rest that they were having. And coming up means that having to face what they've done in a more permanent way. But I like the fact that there is this sense of reaching out from the soil, from the ground, of these zombies coming back to life. The work card is really beautiful. There is a seamless integration here between the skyscrapers and the inside of the image, but at the same time also the nature that is surrounding this. And this is also a way to, let's say, integrate the as above with the so below, because we see the cosmic vibes of the inside of the frame, but also the so below vibes of the nature and the vegetation at the bottom of the card. And now we are having a look at 2 additional cards, as I said. These are very interesting and very significant. This one talks about the mob, and I invite you, if you have this deck, to read the description of the mob in the guidebook, because it's very interesting. So it talks about the fact that mobs form at the beginning because they have a common enemy or a common complaint or a common slogan to shout to the world, because they want to manifest to the world and they want to tell everyone that they're upset about something, they're protesting about something. But what sometimes can happen is that the mob lose their individualities. The people that belong to the mob become a blob, and so they don't think with their own heads anymore. And so one important thing is to understand whether we are part of a mob because we lost focus on what we actually wanted to talk about, or do we still believe that we're going in the right direction. So it is a thought-provoking kind of card. I really like the take on it. And then we got the puppeteer, which is really brilliant. It is my impression that this card is very brilliant because, as you can see here, yes, this is a puppet master, and so it's manipulating and using these 2 characters that look like they're actually fighting. I don't know if you can tell, but it looks like they're going with their index fingers and pointing at each other like that, which could mean that they're fighting. But at the same time, this puppet master is a puppet himself. So what I like to point out in this card is that sometimes the arguments that we're having, we're not necessarily the ones that need to have that argument. We're just tired. Perhaps we have a misunderstanding between each other. Perhaps it's society that wants us to think in a certain way, and it's manipulating us to think in a certain way. And at the end of the day, it's not even society doing that, because the society is the puppeteer that is also a puppet. So let's just go to the core of the problem and have a honest and open look at what the problem is and discuss it with good communication, because that's the only way in which we will solve this problem without being manipulated by someone else in order to have this discussion. Really like this card. And now we're going through the minors, and because this is going to be a super duper long video, I'm just going to go through the minors a bit quicker. So I have not much to say about the aces. I still like them, artistically speaking, but none of the aces really bring about something to talk, let's say. So they're beautiful as well, but not as interesting as the other minors. This is the Two of Wands, and it's about deciding. This is a game, a TV game, let's say. There's a host here, and it's asking the participant to decide whether they want to choose between door number 1 and door number 2. And that is a very beautiful way to depict the Two of Wands, because you're considering what to do in your life. And the Three of Wands, this is actually the opposite. So we have the traditional way to depict the Three of Wands in the outer frame, but in the inner frame, we have the charts. And this is very interesting because it talks about expanding your horizon and going forward for a conquer. And this is a chart pointing to profits going up. So I really like that idea. And the Four of Wands, so there's someone who is reflecting on my interpretation is the way in which you met at the beginning and what has become of you as the 2 groom and bride on top of a cake. The Five of Wands is really interesting because it tells you that there is a lot that can be done with the energy, the fiery energy of the Five of Wands. So you can use it for beating people up, as literally people are doing here. So I don't know if you can see, but in the outer frame, there's a lot of people just literally punching themselves or using sticks to, to hit themselves. Or you can also use it in a different way. And this is a party. And I don't know if you can tell, but this is another stick here. And this is, what's it called? That thing in which you dance and you just arch your back and you have to walk under the stick. I don't remember. I know that it's got a name. But in any case, it is that kind of having fun. So that same kind of energy could be positive or negative at the same time. And in this case, the Six of Wands, we see a queen. It could be Miss Universe, for example, that has accepted the crown. At the same time, though, we can see that there is someone that has been supporting the queen. So that is my interpretation, but it's always to be seen in the Six of Wands as the card that reminds you that, yes, you are the one that is accepting the crown, but never forget that you were made the victory was within your grasp simply because you were also supported by a team that helped you out. And the Seven of Wands is really interesting because this is a goalie. Let me just show you. This is a net at the back. So this is a goalie in a hockey team. And I think that it speaks for itself. So you're obviously standing up for yourself. You're defending your ground. And I think that it's an excellent sports kind of metaphor that fits really well the Seven of Wands. There's another sports metaphor here for the Eight of Wands. But in this case, I love the idea that this could be a message. So there is the sense of power because obviously launching this spear, I don't remember whether it's called javelot or spear. My apologies for that. But basically, this is one of the sports in the Olympics, and you have to throw the stick as far as you can in one direction. So there is this sense of power and speed as well. But I love the fact that this is also a paper airplane, which I was using when I was a kid to, send a message to someone at the front of the classroom or at the back of the classroom. So I really love this idea. There's the sense of speed, but also the message that comes with the Eight of Wands. And with the Nine of Wands, this was slightly more difficult for me to understand. But if you look closer, you see this is barbed wire. You see that? And this is a soldier, and this is a gun. So basically, this is the integration between the soldier defending their own territory in a trench, for example, during the war, and the traditional depiction of the Nine of Wands of the person that is slightly wounded, but they're still going. So I really like the sense of defending yourself and also your territory, but still being at war with the possibility to still go on. And this is brilliant, brilliant. So this is the Ten of Wands, and I don't know if you can see, but these are ants. So the ants are carrying a load. And in this case, the Ten of Wands reminds you that you're carrying too much and perhaps you should put everything down and just make an assessment and decide whether the burdens that you're carrying are necessary for you to be carried or not. And, it tells you that you're just going blindly like an ant that is just doing what needs to be done without even stopping for 1 second and considering that there might be something else that can be done. The Page of Wands, another thing that I have to say about the court cards, I like them for sure, but not all of them present you with something, the equivalent of an epiphany, let's say. For example, in this case, yes, you are climbing, so really like that, the Page of Wands, because there is the sense of energy and adventure of the archetype of the Peter Pan. The Knight of Wands is a person that is driving a motorcycle, but inside the frame you can see there is the mane of the horse. So that is an interesting fusion between these two concepts. And I like that it points to the fact that there is motion. And the Queen of Wands I actually really like because this one, I don't know if you can tell, but this is a filming set. So this is a queen that is sitting on the director's chair, because it's looking and and literally directing the actors, the light, and everything else that needs to be done when filming something. So I really like this interpretation of the Queen of Wands. It is slightly different in the sense that to me, the Queen of Wands is more likely to be an actress rather than a director, but I like it. I appreciate it. And with the King of Wands, I believe this is Freddie Mercury because I remember for Live Aid, he was wearing a white singlet like this one. I could be wrong, but I do believe that it might be Freddie Mercury. And I love Freddie Mercury. I love the fact that he's depicted this way as the King of Wands. If it's not Freddie Mercury, then my apologies, but there is always that sense of performing for so many around you and basking into this really strong, fiery energy. Now we're moving on to the Ace of Cups. So as I said, the aces are beautiful, but they're not necessarily, they don't have that wow factor, I believe. Whereas the Two of Cups, for example, it tells you that a couple is a couple no matter what the circumstances, and the company is always welcome. And you can see here they are in a tropical setting inside the frame, and here they are like dressed like Eskimos. So obviously it's in a very Arctic, very cold kind of settings, but there is still this sense of being together and being happy together. The Three of Cups is a bit confrontational, and I have to say it's very interesting the way in which it's presented, because it shows you inside the frame, it shows you the usual celebration with the three cups raised to cheer up for the friendship, but then it shows you that at the end of the day, see here celebration, and it's the ELEB, which are from here, so we can imagine that it's the same settings, and you find yourself having to clean up the aftermath of a party all by yourself, which is not fun. And then the Four of Cups is very, how should I say this? It made me quite emotional because this, to me, okay, what does it show? It shows someone in an airport. You can clearly see that because there's the sign of the airport here and the parking, and there's people, standing in line, for example, here, or also like in a suitcase with them. And then there is this character, and she's literally gasping for air. So this is very strong for me because it reminds me that there's something very sad about airports. There's something very happy about airports when you go to the arrivals, because it is very emotional to see people, families getting reunited. I myself had a very emotional moment after Australia reopened the borders. We were forced not to leave the country for, I would say, 18 months, more or less 18 months. And then in November 2021, we could finally still go overseas. So it was very different from the rest of the world. I know that it was incredibly difficult to travel during the pandemic. Absolutely. I'm not denying that. But Australia was the only country that actually forbid its citizens to leave the country. Even when you were going to live overseas, many of permanent residents, not just Australian citizens, but for example, you could have been an Italian with an Italian passport living in Australia as a permanent resident. You still, and you might wanted to have gone back to your country, you couldn't do that. So you were denied. We had only 4 reasons to apply. There were no flights, but in any case, you couldn't just walk up to an airport. You needed a permission, and in order to have that permission, you had to apply through a website, show proof of anything. So one was for a funeral, for example, but even in my case, I couldn't go to my father's funeral, so even funerals were declined sometimes. It was for business purposes, and that was the easiest one. As a matter of fact, I know a lot of people that made up some business purposes and they were allowed to exit the country. Or for health reasons, if you, for example, had to receive a treatment overseas that you could not receive in Australia, but in that case, you had to provide a number of certificates. Or I believe there was another reason, which I don't remember. But there were only 4 reasons, and in many, many cases, those 4 reasons were not even granted. So, as I said, I couldn't go to my father's funeral. So there is a sense of gasping, of reaching out for air, of barely making it. that I always associate with airports and departures from the airport. And the way in which I reconnect this with the Four of Cups points to the fact that sometimes that sense of having everything in front of us but never being able to settle for something, it can bring up a lot of anxiety. So I really love this card. The Five of Cups reminds you that even if something is lost, something is still standing. Which is very nice. The Six of Cups is very cute because this is an adult, but they are a child at core. So I actually really, really like this because it really brings you back to the sense of nostalgia for an uncomplicated childhood that is represented by the Six of Cups. And the Seven of Cups, you have the choice in front of you. You're confused. You don't know what to take because some of those things that you don't necessarily see are actually toxic to you, but some others are actually really good. So instead of going for the artificial things that we see in the on the shelves here, just go for something natural. The Eight of Cups is, I am done with all of this crowd and, the deception and being fake to one another. And I'm just going to take a leap of faith and I'm going to jump. So you're basically ready to dive into the unknown. And that is still a better option than being fake. And the Nine of Cups. Now this one, how should I explain this one? Okay. So I'm not going to say the word, but I will do this and I will point at a couple of things here that are going on in the card, as you can see here. Okay. So we all know what we're talking about here. Yes. Okay. That's good. So the card itself is about, rejoicing about having achieved something that has gone well in your life and just don't forget to share the joy with others. So I'm just going to leave it at, let's leave it at that. And you make up this card whatever you want. Then the Ten of Cups tells you that family is everywhere, no matter what. And no matter what you're facing right now, there's also your tribe. Your tribe can be well-dressed, or your tribe can be living in the outskirts or in a shanty town. It's always your family. It's always your tribe. I love this Page of Cups because it is a person that is at the same time immersed in the water, because we can see obviously here the fish, but they also hold a cup with a fish inside. So there is this sense of being inside ourselves, but also being inside nature, let's say. And the Knight of Cups, and this was one of the very first push bikes. I've actually had the opportunity to see and sit on one of these when there was a really big expo at the, I believe it was the Museum of Science and Technology in Sydney a few years ago, and they had these push bikes as well. It's incredibly difficult to sit on these. You need like a step ladder because they're really tall. And the wheels were actually blocked, and I was protected from falling because it would have been impossible for me to even try and pedal, in such a push bike. But it is really, really cute the way in which that's been depicted. The Queen of Cups tells you that you're a queen when you feel at ease with yourself, when you have really good feelings. Obviously, it is the suit of water, and so sometimes you go for a really long walk and your feet hurt, and there's nothing better than that sense of refreshing calmness and soothing that you receive from plunging your feet into the cold water. I actually really like this. And the King of Cups tells you that even in the direst of situation where the waters are really choppy, you may have the master to actually bring the ship to shore in a safe way. The Ace of Swords, so as I said, these are beautiful, but not necessarily something to write home about. Let's put it this way. The Two of Swords is really nice because it shows how you're the one that is playing a really important chess game, and you're thinking, as you can see here. So it reflects on the situation that you're living right now, and the one that is traditionally depicted as the Two of Swords, as you being blindfolded and having two swords by the side of your head. So this is obviously the sense of being stuck, but also I like the fact that there's people behind this character that point to being under scrutiny. So everyone is judging you. Every one of your moves is going to be discussed and also judged and exposed for telling that you're not a pro, or maybe you are a pro, or maybe you're too cautionary, or maybe not enough. But in any case, it's a very tense kind of atmosphere, but it's a very beautiful way to depict this card. The Three of Swords, well, I talked about the Three of Swords because obviously it was one of the cards I was looking for when I presented this deck in my first impressions. And I had to go and find out what the Three of Swords was. So this is a person that has been drinking too much and they passed out on the bench of a bar. And this was a last drink. So obviously you can see it's almost like a martini with olives here. But inside we see the traditional heart that has been pierced by three swords. I like this representation. I like the fact that maybe this person has passed out because it was overwhelmed by feelings, but also by thoughts. And so I can see the suit of the mind in the Three of Swords as well. And this is let's say, this is a musician that is at the same time resting, but also being creative. Because I don't know if you can see here, there's a lot of albums here. So musical albums here. And there is a guitar here. So this person is actually listening to something. So a moment like this Four of Swords, you need to rest because you need to recuperate your energy, but it doesn't mean that it's wasted time. You can also use your mind in the stillness of the Four of Swords to try and understand what you want to create. And then the Five of Swords, this is a race, but it's a bicycle race. It looks like this is an Olympic stadium with a contestant here, an athlete that is winning. And they're at the same time, it looks like they're winning because they have, the addition of a couple of swords on their side, whereas the other ones don't. So it tells you about the unfair advantage, and it's a nice way to present this card. So I appreciate it. The Six of Swords tells you that no matter what your mean of transportation is, whether it's ancient or new, there is this sense of moving towards a safer kind of shore. I really like this one as well. With the Seven of Swords, there's something to talk about the Seven of Swords. The way in which I interpret the Seven of Swords is not entirely negative. I like to think that this person is doing something not necessarily ethical 100% or legal 100%, because they found themselves in a situation in which they had to do something they don't even believe in themselves. So let's say that they are forced to do that out of necessity. And Jesse's take on the card is kind of similar, because it says, are you really ready to do everything that it takes, or anything it takes, in order to get what you want, even lying? You see, because this person is actually swearing on the Bible, I assume, during a trial, but at the same time they are putting their fingers in the universal gestures, or jinxing and saying that I'm not actually telling the truth. I don't necessarily know whether I resonate with this interpretation or not, but I still recognize and I admire the fact that it is not about stealing something, but it's about being aware of what you're willing to risk, or what you're willing to do in order to obtain something that you really, really want. The Eight of Swords is a bit confrontational, but it's also very effective because it talks to us about being pinned down, literally, by eight swords, and feeling like everything that we hold within ourselves is laid bare in front of everyone else for them to see. But Jesse says in the explanation of this card that there's always some way to get rid of this cage. There is a way to release yourself. I don't really see it here after this, but it is a really strong way to represent this card. The Nine of Swords is, about that things that wake you up, that anxiety, that make you worry about stuff that is not even sure to happen 100%, but you think that it's going to happen because it's 3 a.m. and everything looks bleak at night. So the more traditional way of interpreting or depicting that card. The Ten of Swords is really nice when you look at the, not the card itself, but when you look at the meaning of the card. So stand upright. Yes, you've been stabbed 10 times on the back, and yes, everyone is laughing at you, and they're probably gossiping about you, but you need to have the courage to stand upright, even though you are struggling. Really love this card. The Page of Swords, to me, this looks like a scene from one of Hitchcock movies. And I don't remember which one, but it is interesting because the Page of Swords is represented as the person who always sees behind things. So these two are actually talking behind this person's back, but this person is realizing what they're saying by listening into their conversation. The Knight of Swords, it tells that sometimes jumping into a war or a fight because you believe in something, you need to be careful not to be blinded by the purposes that you are embracing. So sometimes you need to recognize that the purpose has become more important than what you're actually doing. And so you need to reflect on that, which I appreciate. And the Queen of Swords, which is my significator, I actually really like this, even though at the beginning I couldn't really understand why. But there is this sense of knowing that the Queen of Swords is the only one in the entire tarot deck that can actually see through the veil, because the Queen of Swords understands what is going on, and they can actually see through all the BS that we have to face on a daily basis. But ironically, in the frame part of the card, it is the one that is actually veiled. So it's a very interesting take on that. And the King of Swords also have this idea of having the control and the dominion and the power and the authority over everyone else, but never forgetting that you still have a heart, for small that can be. And finally, we're moving on to the Suit of Pentacles. So as an Ace of Pentacles here, this is the Two of Pentacles that is really interesting because this is a grenade. At first, I thought it was a heart, but actually is a grenade. So it's really interesting because it tells you that sometimes you need to understand that, yes, even though this may seem whimsical, as in juggling between two things, be careful not to drop anything because that could actually be explosive. And the Three of Pentacles that tells you that you always have to keep your vision in mind in order to be able to finish what you're starting. The Four of Pentacles is very, very intense. So this is basically telling you that if this is depicting a person that has been so occupied and so worried about keeping everything safe within reach and so protecting all their riches, that they have developed this incredible big body outside of their own, and they are kind of stuck now because it's all muscle and it's all basically stuck and frozen into this position. So that's a very beautiful way to describe going from consolidation to stagnation, as the Four of Pentacles will point out to. The Five of Pentacles is also really interesting because it shows this is a soldier that is actually already been to war, not like the others that are marching towards a war, but they are being back. And they have actually been wounded, and it shows, the way which Jesse presented it says, you're wounded because you put all of your money where your mouth is and you failed, so you lost all of your money. But at the same time, don't think that you're alone because you still have people surrounding you. This is an incredibly beautiful card when you actually look at it, because it shows that it can be read as a reversal as well, and it shows the same image within the frame. So there is the sense of things going from the above to the below, but there's also a sense of things going from the below towards the above. So really, really liking this card. The Seven of Pentacles tells you that you've done for now what you needed to do. So you planted the seed, and then the only thing left to do is waiting for it to do its own job. But at the same time, it's difficult because you're still turning and thinking about what you could do in order to improve the situation or make it grow faster, for example. This is the Eight of Pentacles, and it's very interesting because it shows that a job that used to be done by humans is actually done by machines. And so there's always this sense of reminding yourself of what you're doing and the intention of doing it, because it tells you, yes, and for now you're really busy, but let's not forget to double check on what we're doing. Is it really important for us to do it? Because one day what we're doing could be replaced by a machine. And so we probably need to keep our options open to other things. The Nine of Pentacles tells you that you have received this windfall and you're basking in the glory of enjoying what you deserve, but at the same time, never forget to open the gates and share with others. And this is a really beautiful card for the Ten of Pentacles because it shows a person that is walking down a really dark alley, but at the same time, it shows that there's a lot of people behind her that are there to support her. So we're never alone. We're always the result of a lineage, of an ancestral line, and we take that protection with ourselves wherever we go. The Page of Pentacles is the person that initiates their work and they have the vision, but they don't necessarily have the mastering of skills in order to produce this sculpture. The Knight of Pentacles is, can I say, it's a bit whimsical and it's a bit probably mocking the Knight of Pentacles, in the sense that there is this sense of achievement on the soldier, but at the same time, we need to realize that what we're doing is not just following orders. We should actually question what these orders are. So it tells you that you should always question what those orders are, because sometimes you will realize that you're actually part of a merry-go-round. And the Queen of Pentacles, that was a pretty common way to describe it. So outside or inside, let's say, the other side of the luxurious fabrics and the jewelry, there's always something more sober. So there is the recognition that the Queen of Pentacles is also very practical, let's say, because it is always associated with skills and nature and resources. And the King of Pentacles, that brings in a cautionary tale. So this is literally showing a CEO. So this is let's say, a board of directors, but there's also the CEO. And the CEO, as a King of Pentacles, needs to realize that they cannot just gamble with the hopes and dreams of everyone else. So they have that power, but they should be very careful not to gamble away with that. So that was a walkthrough. So what we're going to do now, I'm just going to quickly shuffle the deck and we're going to show you a few pairings with oracle decks that I like. Okay, so the first deck I'm going to pair it with is the Amethyst Oracle by Jessica Bott. And by the way, Jessica has recently launched, or at the time of filming, it was not launched yet, but at the time of posting this video, it will already be launched, the Kickstarter campaign for the Cracked Amethyst Tarot. So check it out if you're interested. It will be, I've seen the images because she's been working on that deck for such a long time. So I'm very curious to see how it looks when it will be completed. So I thought that we have a very similar kind of art style, even though obviously the tarot deck is borderless, whereas the oracle deck has got borders. But we've got a very similar art style, and we also have kind of similar color palette. Resistance between Justice and the Four of Pentacles. This is literally what the meaning behind the Justice card in this deck is. So the resistance, just bringing up to the surface the actual truth and not what we've been told or what we people wanted us to believe in. But resistance is also the resistance that we have to let things go in the Four of Pentacles. And lies between the Four of Cups and the Ace of Swords. That's really beautiful. This Earth between the Sun and the Three of Pentacles. Obviously, the Suit of Pentacles is the suit of the Earth, so there's the alchemical element that combines them. Empty with Nine of Swords and the Two of Pentacles, so the emptiness, not having everything in front of us or having something in front of us and not being able to see it, that can cause the anxiety of the Nine of Swords. And we need to be careful about evaluating what is it that we're juggling between, because sometimes it can be something that is not always what we believe it is. So we need to make some kind of an investigation on that. And a Knight between the Ace of Wands and the Two of Cups. I think that it works. Five of Cups, fear, the Queen of Pentacles. Definitely the loss of the Five of Cups can also produce fear that needs to be nurtured and cured by the Queen of Pentacles. And the Day between the World and the King of Swords. What do you guys think? This is, I'm thinking when it comes to, certainly the color palette, certainly the art style is very similar when it comes to the flow between the cards. I think that these white borders actually create a little bit of a stop and start, so the flow is not seamless. So I don't know whether that actually works or not, but I do like to read the keywords and interpret them by focusing on the cards around them. So I don't mind this one. I think it's still working, but perhaps it's not the best one. And I have other decks that I want to try out. So let's see other ones. Okay, so the next deck that I want to try out with this is the Fool's Item Oracle, which is an indie deck. And this is the limited edition. So Fool's Item Oracle deck, Oracle of Enchantment. And I believe it was sold together with the 78 Ecological or 78 Magical, I can't remember. This is a deck that I believe has got, it's a collaborative deck, so obviously the artwork would not be always the same, but I believe that it will show us very similar kind of artwork to the one in the tarot deck. And the fact that it's also borderless can actually help in creating a seamless conversation between the two. I don't know though, because yeah, I can see it, but not in all of the cards. And Portal, but well, this one definitely is. So we've got the Portal card between the Two of Wands and the Three of Cups. So obviously there is the Portal, which is the same as choosing between the two doors and the Two of Wands, but at the same time, it's a portal in time because it shows you what friendship should truly be about, not just being together for the moment of celebration, but helping out afterwards as well. So the Sage with the Four of Wands and the Queen of Swords, and the Runes with the Knight of Pentacles and the Ten of Swords. I don't know, I don't think this is, I think I prefer the Amethyst Oracle out of these two. I've got other decks as well, so these are not the only ones that I'll be showing you as a pair. But let me know in the comments below what you think about this one, because I am actually, I'm doing my Marie Kondo challenge, and I'm going through all of my decks, and I actually stopped at the Fool's Item Oracle, and I considered whether I actually want to keep it or not. And the problem with this, it's not a problem. The problem that I have, so my way of relating to this deck is not really flowing. It doesn't really resonate with me, because even though I really love the artwork and the colors, and I think that this deck, for example, pairs up really, really well with the Unicorn's Journey Tarot by Lisa Papez. So obviously I will want to keep it for that. But at the same time, it only shows titles and also the artist that created that card, which is great to know as information, but at the same time, it doesn't necessarily tell me how to interpret the card. And when it's something really obvious, because there are obvious cards like the compass, of course, yes, I understand that, how to interpret the compass, but in many other cases, it's not that straightforward, it's not that easy. The cloak, maybe it's the cloak of invisibility, the crystal ball that lets you see through things. The chalice in this case, I don't necessarily know. Do I read it as, you know, the Ace of Cups, or maybe it's a relationship, but maybe it's the fluidity of water. So there's a number of things that I would rather have at least a guidebook, let's say. And I don't know, so it doesn't come with the guidebook inside the box, but there might be access to a PDF, perhaps. I'm not entirely sure. In any case, I am considering rehoming this Oracle deck because it just doesn't really, it doesn't really flow when I'm reading. But let's see another one that I want to pair up with the tarot deck. So the next deck I'm going to try and pair up is this one here. These are the backs, and this is called the Novice Witch's Oracle, which I really love. The backs are really, really cute, really nice colors and design as well. I actually like this deck because this is the one deck that I have to absolutely use whenever I'm using the Barbara Walker Tarot. This is the deck that can actually sweeten the Barbara Walker, if you can believe it. So if you've been using the Barbara Walker Tarot and you feel that it's been biting you, you're not alone. And if that bites, if those bites stayed with you and made you some kind of an aversion, feeling some kind of an aversion towards the deck, and you don't want to use it anymore, try and purchase the Novice Witches Oracle, which is a mass market deck, by the way. And you will see that it actually works really, really well. So I'm thinking the art style is also very similar to the tarot, and the color palette is also kind of similar. So we've got Study, the Grimoire with Study, between the Nine of Swords and the Seven of Wands. And there's this sense of being overly protective of ourselves and perhaps thinking, always thinking about that the worst can happen. But if you actually look at things in a more open way and you study them, you will realize that it's not always the case. And the inner child with the goat between the Three of Swords and the Strength card. This is telling you obviously to reach out for your core self whenever you feel that kind of overwhelm, because your inner child, your inner self will definitely offer that kind of protection that is also, coming out of the strength card here. And so that goes without saying. It's a kind of a barrier that you build up in order for your inner child to be protected, but at the same time to give you back that sense of energy that you feel you have lost. And the cat with independence and the Nine of Cups and the Devil. I feel like we're getting somewhere here. The boar with the wild spirit within the tower and the King of Cups. It looks really interesting for sure. Aesthetically speaking, I think that this is probably the one that I like the most. And I also appreciate the fact that we not only have the titles in this oracle, but we also have the keywords. So you will always be able to expand the message out of these oracle cards because it's right there for you to see. So the Fortune with a pentacle, with the Ace of Pentacles and the Lovers. I really like this combination. The Hat with uniqueness between the Chariot and the Sun. And Raven with dreams with the Star and Justice. Really, really beautiful. I actually really like this pair. And let's have a look, because I've got another couple of decks that I wanted to try out. It is admittedly not very easy to find an oracle deck that shares the same aesthetics. So when it comes to art style and also color palette, but also the same kind of vibes, because this deck is very, very talkative. It's a deck that you need to understand on a deeper level than any other deck, I would say, this tarot deck. And so when you do that, in order to work with it, it's difficult to rely on the message from an oracle deck. But I'm going to try and see another couple of decks. Okay, so the next deck is the Signs of the Times Oracle by Crystal Bennett. This is released by Hay House. It's a mass market deck. It is, I think I tried it out earlier, and I think that this is my favorite pairing. It does show a very modern take on all of the symbols, which, it is conducive to a smooth reading or a smooth communication between these two. I'm not entirely sure about the color palette, but the art style is quite similar as well. So let's see. And also, again, this oracle deck actually still offers you the title, the image title, but also a keyword in order to understand how to read the cards. So the Moon with the emotions between the Four of Wands and the King of Wands, and perhaps there is so much fire here that we need to calm down and add some water. So consider the emotions that are at stake when we are going through through these life events, and peace with harmony between the Three of Cups and the Knight of Wands. So there's this sense of adventure that comes out, emotion that comes out of the Knight of Wands. But at the same time, we want to have a sense of direction. And the sense of direction in the community, in the unity, in the friendship of the Three of Cups is what can produce harmony and peace. And fireflies, we wander between the Death card and the King of Pentacles, and ancestry between the Eight of Wands and the Nine of Wands, and lightning, disruption between the World and Temperance card. There's I feel like we're definitely being given the opportunity to do a strong reading by using these two decks together. Even though in my, let's say, the size of the times is almost minimalist, I would say, because you don't have really busy cards, and most of the time it's just one object and then, you know, really focused in. So you have an object which is magnified, but at the same time is representative of something. So it is an object, but it's also a symbol. And I really like this opportunity to use these two together. I might actually work with these two because I feel like we're definitely in a more conducive kind of environment here to do a reading. But let me just show you another. I have two more decks that I wanted to show you that I think might pair up nicely with the Unveiled Tarot. Okay, so the next one can be a little bit of a strange choice, but I think that it will pair nicely. And this is the Horror Oracle Classic, the Classic Horror Oracle by Riccardo Disegno. I love this deck because it always reminds me of a few classic horror movies that I used to watch. And I was thinking maybe this will give an entirely different perspective on how to read the cards. And mind you, it can be something successful or it could be something not so successful. So we just have to see. I did try it out earlier and I liked it, but you never know because it always changes. Obviously, I'm shuffling the tarot deck, so it obviously changes the way in which the cards are coming up together. So lies, well, okay, lies between the Six of Cups and the Page of Pentacles. Perhaps the world you're looking back to in fondness because you think that it was an uncomplicated kind of childhood without all of the problems of being an adult. There was all lies because the problems were still there. It's just that you were not exposed to them. Wow, okay. That's already starting. It's a very strong start. Illness with the Seven of Pentacles and the Five of Pentacles. There is definitely the sense of, well, this is Cujo, by the way. And it is a very sad story. I don't know if you read Cujo by Stephen King. It is a really sad story because I personally love animals and obviously also dogs. And this is, I believe, I believe it's a Saint Bernard, so it's a huge dog in the story. And but it is violent because it's ill. It's very ill. It's a very sick dog. So it is very sad. What happens is very sad. So in any case, you can definitely feel the sense of illness, of not being complete when you look at the person, the soldier that is coming out of the war, missing a limb. And so the Seven of Pentacles that is trying to make sense of what is happening, but you know, being finding all of these obstacles because we are not 100%, we're not feeling 100%. And ice, and this is the thing, really scary. This is ice between the Wheel of Fortune and the Seven of Swords. And with ice comes the idea of being frozen, being stuck, because they are literally stuck in that base in the Arctic. And so there is the sense of fluidity in the Wheel of Fortune, but the sense of being stuck in the Seven of Swords. It tells you that you are pushed or being pushed to do something that you don't necessarily want to do, but because you're here, you have to kill you know, this thing that used to be your friend. So you cannot let it kill you. So you're not happy about having to do that, but you do it nonetheless. And the Bates Motel, the cycle with shock between the Page of Cups and the Two of Swords. There's this sense of duality of, what's his name? Anthony Perkins is the actor, I believe. And the name of the I forgot the name. Uh, it's obviously the Bates Motel. So Bates, I don't remember the first name. But in any case, it's obviously referring to the duplicity of the character that, it looks very almost shy when you meet him, but then obviously he's the killer. I hope I'm not spoiling anything, obviously, because I just assume that everyone has watched or at least heard about Psycho. And then face between the Nine of Pentacles and the Seven of Cups. I don't have immediately any kind of reference to the movie. I don't know this movie. Experience, which is Hellraiser, obviously between the mob and the chill ones, is fantastic because obviously in Hellraiser you will see a number of characters always taking the wrong decisions, which is almost comical at times. But at the same time, you can also feel how the determination of the mob around you can literally take you to your own demise. So that's really beautiful. And the egg with Alien, between the Four of Swords and the Knight of Cups. And here, obviously, it's shown in the sense of, that the way in which Sigourney Weaver in Alien Resurrection, was it? I don't remember. But she herself, at a certain point, incubates the alien. And the way in which she was infected was because she was resting. So there is something that I really like to see these correspondences. Earth with Nosferatu and the Queen of Pentacles and the Fool, and Dreams with Freddy, Freddy Krueger, obviously, and Nightmare on Elm Street between the Knight of Swords and the Hermit. It's beautiful because I like to think of Freddy as a kind of a hermit because there's a reason why Freddy is like this. And it's obviously comes from social disadvantage and mental illness and stuff like that. So there's something there as well. And the other side, I think this is, it might either be an episode from the Twilight Zone, I don't remember, or Poltergeist, but I'm not entirely sure. I know I should be able to recognize it, but the Gremlins with Midnight and the Page of Swords and the King of Swords. So this is obviously getting to know the truth, but the Gremlins are really cute, but if you get them wet and if you feed them after midnight, for example, they transform into these gremlin monsters, and you get to know the truth by investigating, like the Page of Swords would do. And Escape, and I believe this is the Pan's Labyrinth with the Six of Pentacles and the Four of Pentacles. Well, the reason why the protagonist in Pan's Labyrinth is incurring into all of these problems is because she was told not to eat from a table full of food, but she was starving. And so she ate anyway. And so in order to, protect her things, there is this sense of getting to the darker side of the stagnation, let's say, and facing darkness when you're actually not supposed to do that. You're supposed to release and not hoard, let's say. And the Devil with the Ace of Cups and the Queen of Wands. I don't remember which movie this is. It could be any movie. It could be Exorcism, but it doesn't look like one. Mask. So this is it Friday the 13th? I don't remember. This is Jason. The name of the monster is Jason, with the puppeteer and the Seven of Wands. And Harvest, this is the Children of the Corn, I believe. And Hunger, I don't remember which one this one is. It could be Us. No, not Us. Another by Jordan Peele. I don't remember. But in any case, let me know in the comments below what you think about this pairing, because obviously this is The Exorcist, by the way. This really resonates with me. I believe that it's an excellent pairing, even though, of course, because of the oracle being centered and focused on horror movies, you do have the impression that it's taking you towards the shadow side of the tarot. But even so, it is a really interesting pairing that I think resonates very much for me. And I have another oracle deck that I want to try out. So let's see if that one resonates or not. So the last oracle deck that I want to try out and pair with the Unveiled Tarot is this Southern Gothic Oracle. Again, for a number of aesthetic reasons that I think will be a successful pairing. So let's try them out together. Again, this one, the oracle does have borders, but I still believe that the color palette are very similar, and there might be some similarity when it comes to the artwork as well. So we got roots with the influence and support between the Eight of Cups and the King of Cups. And the dog with loyalty and belonging with the Temperance and the Magician for sure. The candlelight spirit with virtue and oppression between the Knight of Wands and the Ten of Pentacles. And the pair of shoes with coupling and partnership between the King of Wands and the Moon. That's really interesting. The pine cone with third eye and new perspective between the Four of Wands and the Page of Wands. This is very much a hangman kind of card or energy. Mason jar with mentorship and protection between the Three of Cups and the Five of Wands. I don't know, I feel that it might not be the best, and I still think that the classic horror oracle was actually a better match than this one. Even though I like the way the cards look, aesthetically speaking, there are resonances and echoes between the colors, as you can see here, and also sometimes also with the themes or the images on the cards as well. But I don't necessarily know whether this will be my first choice when I will want to use the Unveiled Tarot together with an oracle. I think I would definitely go to either the Signs of the Times oracle for a more balanced reading, and the Classic oracle for a more like a shadowy kind of reading. But I really, really like the way in which I can use the Unveiled Tarot. It's been one of those really shocking discovery when you buy a deck and you think you like it for whatever reason, but then you discover that there is so much more to the deck than you thought initially. And having been able to do this discovery with you when I was filming the first impression after the unboxing, and also being able here to do this walkthrough with you guys and also trying out these pairings is actually really, really nice for me. So I am really happy if you enjoyed this video. The last thing that I wanted to do for now is to actually pull a card for all of us. And then we're going to have a look at the guidebook and see what it says. So let me just shuffle this quickly. Okay, so let's have a look. So as I was saying, this particular cardstock makes it very easy to fan out the card. Sorry, I forgot to zoom out, but I'm gonna do it now. So there we go. And we're just gonna pull a card. Let's see, I want this one here. What have we got? So the Knight of Swords. Okay, so let's have a look. I'm just gonna zoom in first. And then we're gonna have a look at what the guidebook says about the Knight of Swords. So we go to the Minor Arcana, and we got the Pentacles here, and the swords immediately before that. So Knight of Swords. The knight charges into the fray with a passion for the cause, launching themselves into the conflict with the take no prisoners attitude. Protected by layers of defense, the knight feels safe from any attack, but while the armor protects, it also blinds and keeps the knight removed from the situation. The knight loses the ability to see any nuance or complexity and assumes any opposing idea is a villain to be vanquished. You may have forgotten the real purpose of the battle you're charging into. That's a very nice take on the Knight of Swords. To me, is the Crusader. But it's also true that sometimes, because it is the suit of the mind, sometimes we have to remember ourselves to also use the heart and find the balance between the war we are jumping into simply because we believe in something, but we haven't listened and we haven't checked with our heart first. So there is one one very typical example that I always like to bring up whenever I talk about the Knight of Swords, and is that whenever you love someone and you're in a relationship with someone, it is always most important or more important to be caring and compassionate and to be loving this person rather than being right. So sometimes we may actually accept that reality is not to be defended, that if the other person says that, I don't know, this color is purple, we know that it's not purple, we know that it's pink, but if this person really believes that this is purple and they really believe, and it's very important to them, obviously this is not a perfect example, but you get the gist, then, you know, being kind is more important than being right, especially when you care about this person. So let them believe that this is purple rather than pink. Really good card. And I have to say, this deck had me flabbergasted. I don't know whether it is still a word that anyone uses, but I was really shocked by how deep this deck is. And I really, really love it. Let me know in the comments below if you can think of another pairing with another oracle deck, because I'm always curious about knowing how you guys use these decks that I'm presenting. Thank you so much for watching and have a great day.